Hello, I'm Shade Ravenblack, aka Shade Black Psychotic Gremlin. Just a reminder, my content's not for kids, it cuts like a sailor. Anyway, welcome. I don't normally watch other people's, content as a video. That's more Aspen's, gold and moist criticals expertise. But I felt in this case it was important, so to make it easier, I made a playlist. And I'm gonna explain why I have a Clippy, up on the upper right. We'll let this video explain it. So let's watch this together.
I was listening to the Facebook whistleblower hearings with Senator Josh Hawley a few months back. One of the elements that stuck out to me was when they were talking about how if an underage girl has deleted a selfie, Meta keeps track of this because they know that this person likely has low self-esteem at that moment that they deleted a picture of themselves, which means that they may be more apt to purchase something from an advertiser of a cosmetic product. And I think about this within the context of what companies used to get in trouble for and what they do, or more importantly, don't get in trouble for today. I grew up in the 90s, a time when Microsoft had hell and fury fall down upon them because they bundled a web browser with their operating system. Whether you think this is a good idea or not, I personally think that a web browser being installed in every single person's computer that's standards non-compliant, that is so bad that you can literally get a virus from visiting a website, has its problems. But when you look at what it is that companies got in trouble for in the 90s, it just doesn't hit the same when you look at what companies get away with now. I remember having a Dell Dimension 233 back in the day, and if you wanted to get the one that had slightly better graphics, they would give you a free installation of Microsoft Office. And with Microsoft Office back in the day, it came with Clippy. Whether or not you like Clippy and whether or not you liked Microsoft Office or having an operating system that had the browser built into it that could easily get you a virus when you visited other websites that were trying to invade your privacy, the one thing that you could say, unlike Facebook, who is trying to profit off of young girls that feel suicidal, Clippy simply wanted to help. He might have been annoying, but he just wanted to help. There were no ulterior motives. If you told Clippy that you were having a bad day, he wasn't going to use that information to try and figure out which advertiser to sell you to, nor was he trying to steal your personal data or get you to purchase other Microsoft products. He had no ulterior motives. He was simply there to help. Unlike many modern pieces of software, like what you get from Adobe or Intuit, where you can't buy QuickBooks anymore, you can't buy a video editor anymore, you have to pay a subscription fee for it. If I were to boot up that computer that has not been used for 28 years, and I wanted to start up Microsoft Word, I could do so without connecting to the internet. And Clippy would still be there, happy and enthusiastic as ever, simply wanting to help. Adobe is another example of this. This is a company that tried to twist people's arms into having AI and machine learning stuff go through their personal data. Not public data, not the speeches that I give, not my website or my blog posts or my videos, but my private data, the stuff that I'm editing. And there were people that were not able to get into their account until they agreed to this new end user license agreement. When they are looking for access to your data, they're doing so because they want to train an AI on how to do what you do without paying you, without your consent. Clippy simply wanted to help. When Clippy would ask you if you wanted help with writing your letter, Clippy wouldn't even read the contents of your letter. He just wanted to offer suggestions. Game of Thrones had, I'm not going to spoiler alert, there's this Sons of the Harpy in season 5. They were these people that wore masks and they pushed back against the new regime. And the purpose of the mask was to let the leaders know that when you see people with this mask, we are against you and your new regime, and we are going to push back against it as often as we can. And the worry with the Sons of the Harpy mask is that it starts with one person putting the mask on. And then somebody else gains the balls to put the mask on. And then 20 or 40 or 100 of them put the mask on. And once 100 or 1,000 of them put the mask on, there's nothing that the leaders can do at that point. Enough people have put it on, and enough people have come together with solidarity. And they're going to do something about it. Now, granted, this may not be the best analogy because it was, spoiler alert, they were trying to bring back slavery, and they also were just bad people. Khaleesi kind of became a shitbag at that point, too. But besides, I think that Clippy is like a modern-day Sons of the Harpy mask. If you're tired of companies changing the terms of the sale after the sale and getting away with it, turn your profile photo to a Clippy. If you're tired of companies that have the ability to reach into your house and ransomware your products so that they stop working unless you pay them again, claiming that that's legal, but then when somebody tries to give you back access to what you bought and paid for, that's illegal, change your profile photo to a Clippy. If you're tired of sex bots invading the comment section on a regular basis, and their comments always posting with no problem, but your comments being censored even when you're not saying anything that bad, change your profile picture to a Clippy. If Google, being one of the premier data mining companies on earth, not being able to tell that little fucking cat with 2 pillows next to it that they try to make look like an ass so that thirsty young men click it as they normalize sex trafficking on the platform that doesn't allow you to express an opinion bothers you, change your profile picture to a Clippy and let them know that you're not happy. Clippy never tried to normalize sex trafficking. He just wanted to help. If you're tired of companies saying out loud that the reason they want to keep you from fixing what you bought and paid for is that may take money away from them, change your profile photo to a Clippy. I never expected to win the legislative battle. It would be nice if I did, but it was never something that I set as I need to do this or I'm a failure. What I always hoped to do was win the cultural battle, where all of you understand what's going on and you decide that enough is enough. If I ever have a chance in my personal life to push back against this, I will. You're maybe not going to send that email that you're supposed to send to Interso to tell them, oh, by the way, make sure this chip doesn't end up on Mouser.com. Here's an NDA, blah, 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 the supplier agreement. Maybe you just forget to send that email. When there's a new consumer rights law that the senator that you work for is on the fence about supporting, and there's a lobbyist that's going to be against it that wants to have dinner, whoops, maybe their invitation went to spam. I didn't see that. Sorry, boss. Maybe you quit before you create a fake paywall to test if your customers will pay again for what they already paid for. Or maybe when you send out that ransomware firmware update, you make it opt-in instead of opt-out. Whoopsie, if in some bizarro world it is actually illegal to make a thermostat work again, and this bastard of a CEO decides to try and get the individual in trouble, 10 cases to prosecute, only got time for 6. Maybe I just ignore this one. When a company CEO logs into their Slack and sees 10,000 Clippies looking back at them, what I hope occurs is that they intuitively understand that they no longer live in a world where they can get away with fucking over the consumer. That their employees, their partners, are not going to be accomplices to this anymore. That they are alert and they are aware of what is going on, and they are going to politely but firmly push back against it. Every single one of those 10,000 people will be an obstacle to the anti-consumer practices and the anti-ownership practices, and it will no longer be another cog in the assembly line sending us all into a dystopia. There will be a moment where that one person who usually would not have a say in anything can be activated, and in that moment, keep the world from sliding further into a dystopia, or help push it forward in the opposite direction. But we all have to get together, and the first step is making it public that we know what's going on. That starts with a Clippy. On YouTube, if you're with me, I ask that you change your profile picture to a Clippy. At work, change your Slack profile picture to a Clippy. If you work at the White House, don't take down the United States flag, but somewhere on the grounds, put up a flag of a Clippy. Clippy's a symbol that what used to be considered one of the worst annoyances in our life would now not only be welcomed, but for all of his flaws, celebrated as an idol. Because for all of these things that occur right now where there is negative malice of intent, I want to take away what you own. I want to take this back. I want to get your data. I want to sell you to an advertiser when I know that you're crying. Clippy just wanted to help. And if you were to turn him on today, unlike most cloud bullshit, he'd still work. Hulu Foundation is going to be announcing the winners to both the Future Home Bounty and the Echelon Bikes Bounty within the next month. Us offering 5,000 here, 20,000 there. It pushes the ball forward. But at the end of the day, that does nothing in contrast to organizing all of you. We're happy to get the ball rolling, but for us to truly win, we need to show that if you push us, Clippy clips back. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video.
Fucking South Park. But anyway, yeah, he's right. You should have the right to own your shit and have a voice. And the fact that we keep falling further and further into surveillance, if I could talk, I'm sorry, to basically Big Brother, like watching over us, and people not being able to own their shit, it's fucking scary, man. It's fucked up. But yeah, that's why I have a Clippy right here. And I may put a Clippy next to my avatar in the future. I probably won't completely replace my profile pic with a Clippy, but I may edit a Clippy in my profile pic in the future, but we'll see. But yeah, I just wanted to actively fight more, like, against this shit, because this is ridiculous. And, people kept saying that Voice Critical and Has Been Gold, other people should be talking about this, spreading the shit. I mean, look, man. Begging people to be the hero, Sometimes it sucks because people are so desperate for a hero, but sometimes we need to be our own heroes and inspire others. Step up and just inspire others. Because these people, all these people I mentioned, and the people in the playlist right there, like, see, they're like you and me. They're everyday people. They're doing what they love. Like, all it takes is just because these phones, these computers, we have the power at our fingertips. All these companies are trying to distract us and tear us apart. Politicians, all of them. There's a whole internet beyond social media. Like, social media does not make the entirety of the internet. But I basically talked a lot about that in like one of my Sonic Rumble streams. I'll put that in the link description below too, but let's move on.
My heart's fine.
No one cares?
Gals, me Muda.
But yeah, shout out to those two guys, really. Gaston is just a... I will be putting their videos in the link description below. Alright. Please give them all... Well, two of them. It's just a little distracting because just little 4 videos, but no. Give both of them a like and subscribe, please. And check out their content. They're great. Anyway.
Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and it's a messy day today. You know, there's been a lot of age verification laws that have just started to come in. You know, honestly, I didn't expect to make so many videos in such a rapid amount of time, but honestly, this situation has advanced so rapidly that it's blowing my mind. It's actually difficult to be on top of everything over here, so I want you to just excuse me a little bit, because this video is genuinely going to be messy. We got a lot of shit to talk about, and there's a lot of truth bombs that I need to drop on some people so that, you know, you don't listen to the shitty silver-tongued politicians. But ladies and gentlemen, you know what? We got to fight back. It's very easy to fight back. All you got to do is pick up your phone, pick up a pen, grab a keyboard, write an email, bitch the fuck out of your senators, your congressmen, your congresswomen, everything you can to get things changed. Now, today we're looking at something known as HR 7757, the Kids Act. Now, of course, you might be like, well, this sounds pretty good on paper, Buddha. The Kids Act, it's designed to keep those kids safe on the internet. We're going to look closely at this bill and we're actually going to point out the actual parts of this bill that are actually so weak to the point that it actually doesn't protect kids as much as it protects companies like Facebook, companies like TikTok, and even gives them a little leeway to grab your information without really any fucking repercussions. So to give you an idea, a lot of people that have actually been in the game of protecting children have said that both COPA 2.0 and the Kids Act needs actual fixes before they can protect the kids online. So, of course, understanding the Senate actually passed both of these things literally like a day ago, from my understanding. And again, they have to say this on regard to this. Congress's right to strengthen online privacy protection for teens. I do tend to agree. You know, COPA was designed to basically prevent the underage children in our society, minors, from losing their information on the internet. It was basically a data protection policy, which a lot of sites like YouTube, for instance, had to comply by basically saying, hey, listen, if you're under a certain age, we literally can't collect information on you. It would be wrong. And I do tend to agree that these kind of protection laws should actually not just be for kids, but actually also for adults as well. We need like a version of GDPR, for instance, over here in North America, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Mexico. If you're in the Great Cum Zone, then you need to be having your data protected. Simple as that. So when it comes to the Kids Act, it's actually a step backward for online safety. It is the latest Frankenstein's monster of good and bad children's online safety proposals. After making drastic improvements to the COSA, the committee undermined its own progress by combining this legislation with other bills that take more controversial and restrictive approaches, such as age verification measures and a blanket ban on ephemeral messaging to children. So look, even the people that are fucking on the side of this case, like even people that normally I would disagree with, they're even like, it doesn't really even do enough. If anything, it actually does less than what we expected. So you can actually read this bill for yourself, HR 7757, the Kids Act, and there are some key highlights, for instance. Now, according to this, it has the relationship with this to state law. No state or political subdivision of a state may prescribe, maintain, enforce, or continue in effect any law, rule, regulation, requirement, standard, or other provision having the force and effect of law to the extent that such law, rule, regulation, requirement, yada yada yada, directly prohibits ephemeral or direct messaging on a covered platform, regulates parental direct messaging control on covered platforms for teen covered users. Now, the issue that people have over here is that certain states may actually have better laws. What is actually happening over here is a federal law is overseeing the state law, and the federal law doesn't actually seem to be strong enough. So, this is actually one red flag that a lot of people have had, right? The other situation that comes out of this is addressing the harm to minors. So, for instance, a provider of a covered platform shall establish, implement, maintain, and enforce reasonable policies, very important to remember that word, practices, and procedures that address the following harms to minors. So, here they reference threats of physical violence so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that such threats impact a major life activity of a minor. So, violent threats, sexual exploitation and abuse, distribution of literal drugs, and financial harm, so scams or, deceptive practices that, grab children of their money. So again, they covered all of these 4 points, which again, I want you to remember, right? The reasonable policies mentioned here. The other situation that comes out is the term know. Now, know or knows means to have actual knowledge or to have acted in willful disregard. So the reason why I wanted to point out these specific mentions is that for a lot of individuals that were actually looking deeper into this law, it turns out that these are actually weaker than whatever the state would have brought in to begin with. For instance, the actual covering of harms is physical violence, exploitation, narcotics, financial fraud, and it actually drops a lot of references to things like mental health, which might remind things like depression and anxiety, suicidal thoughts, for instance, were the reasons that, a lot of these laws were introduced. Kids would access the internet, they would scroll through social media feeds, get depressed, or they would get cyberbullied. A lot of these mental harms aren't necessarily brought in. If anything, it seems like it's loosened up to the point that it doesn't accurately target what these people wanted these laws to do to begin with, which pisses not just the people that wanted extra, age verification and child protection, but it also just pisses off people that have to deal with the consequences of this shit on our actual stuff without seeing any of the real tangible benefits. Now, the other thing that actually mattered the most here was things like duty of care, which basically eliminates the duty of care with the term reasonable policies, practices, and procedures. So again, while it sounds incredibly reasonable on the actual surface, a lot of individuals say that that basically could just mean that platforms like Facebook or TikTok literally just have shit written down like a compliance document and basically have it sitting around somewhere. The other thing that also came out was that knowledge standard, which is why I talked about, willing knowledge. Like I actually brought that exact quote up because, for instance, knowledge itself, actually having knowledge or willful disregard, actually allows a lot of these platforms, from my understanding, and mind you, nothing that I'm saying here comes from a legal background. It's just me being really, really, really hyper-focused on this entire topic. Again, if a lawyer wants to correct me, please feel free, but I've read this from other senators and other legal experts as well. So for instance, things like collecting your information, a lot of that stuff where like they're capturing your age data, they're capturing a lot of these platforms do something which is known as strategic ignorance, which I think a great platform, for instance, is something like Roblox, where it turns out like thousands upon thousands of children have been basically like groomed on that platform or have actually encountered some danger. And when it comes to things like, again, strategic ignorance, basically these platforms will only do the bare minimum, and if there actually is something going on, it's not as if these platforms spend any extra resources, tangible resources to actually address these problems. It's really mostly an after the fact where we just start collecting IDs, or we start verifying platforms and users, and nothing really ends up coming out of it. There's the same level of kids constantly keep getting groomed, even with or without these changes. So ultimately, what's funny about it too is that obviously there's a lot of people that have actually even written this law, written this rule. So this is back in December 5th, 2025, for instance. Even the people behind this law, for instance, Blumenthal, for instance, the senator that wrote this actual law or introduced this, argued that without that duty of care provision, lawmakers are enabling major tech companies and shying away from actually holding them accountable. But he remains hopeful that both of these guys can figure out some compromise bill and see a renewed attention to the issue as it progresses. Totally caving on the duty of care is an actual abdication. There has to be some duty of care so the big tech guys will recognize its responsibility, and the House surrendering is simply a sign of big tech's power. Again, this is an interesting bill because on the surface, it almost sounds like it's perfect, right? Like the kids are going to be totally safe. There's always going to be provisions in place to protect them. But here's the thing, a weak federal bill is actually ideal for a lot of these big tech companies. Like, if you haven't been following for years now, Facebook has actually been on the battle lines trying to get places like Apple and Google to basically be responsible for age verification and age attestation. They basically said, listen, put the blame on the fucking people distributing the applications. Let them do the hardline shit. And, basically don't look at us, which I think is kind of bullshit because they're ultimately the people that run the platforms. With or without the application, you can access Facebook, okay? Simply putting the blame on the app hosters, the app marketplace, is not a good idea because ultimately it burdens everybody. People don't use Facebook, okay? Not everyone in the world uses Facebook. A substantially large amount of people do use the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Putting all of the limitations on that and basically throwing everyone under the bus is not the responsibility. It's not something that should be happening to me or you. It should be happening to people that are running Facebook or anything meta related, right? So to speak. So for instance, what's really interesting about it to me is even in places like Florida, a lot of these bills are getting introduced where they're talking about age verification and attestation. And what's interesting over here is that one thing that I find super funny from people that are like sharing the slop is that a better alternative to social media bans and government overreach is ensuring parents are given stronger tools to oversee their child's online activities. This year, Utah, Texas, Louisiana passed the App Store Accountability Act to strengthen parental controls by requiring app stores to be held accountable and giving parents authority over what their children can access on their device. Now, I don't understand these fucking laws in particular. It obviously comes from these people using iPhones, which is why they're jumping onto terms like App Store instead of Play Store. But here's the thing, right? Like, from my understanding, typically you can make an Apple family, like you can make a parent iCloud account, and if I want to make my kid an iCloud account, I make an account, I put it under my iCloud's name, and then whoop, look at that. I can actually monitor exactly what my kid downloads or doesn't. The actual like technology and safeguards are there. I feel like parents who are fucking trying to get the state to baby you have literally put no effort, in my opinion, into actually analyzing these laws, actually analyzing these platforms. We have had parental controls for fucking decades now. When I was a kid, my parents put the passcode on the naughty channels, okay, after a certain hour. Trying to watch Family Guy in my house wasn't happening. My parents looked at an age rating, said, hey, listen, that's above, that's like PG-16 or whatever the hell it was in Canada. Anything before that, Kids want to watch some Teletoon? They can before like 7 o'clock. That's when all the adult shows come out or the suggestive shows come out, and then they started to block that. Of course, there was shit like V-chip. There was parental controls on basically most operating systems. There was to a point that even when it came to the router level, a lot of routers, at least in Canada, were taught, at least my dad could figure out how to put the blocks on the domains, all right? So this is not something that parents they don't have access to, is that most of the people that are letting the state govern them for their shitty actions have not put the effort into realizing that this stuff already existed.
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana. We've already sold over 2.9 million barrels, creating steady jobs for hard-working folks chasing the American dream. You can share in our success by investing with Phoenix Energy and get 9 to 13% annual interest through our Regulation D 506C bond offering. Join our next investor webinar to learn more about Phoenix Energy.
Nearly home.
Just need more space. I feel like I'm suffocating.
Oh no. Is this the episode with the breakup?
How will we find the one?
Okay, let's simmer down now. Y'all need Realtor.com, the app the pros trust most. With over 500,000 new listings every month, you could find the one today.
This could be it.
Better put a key ring on it.
You could say that
Yeah,
again.
I just
You
got
better
tired
put
of
a key
skipping
ring on
these
it.
because they just kept going. I'm sorry.
Make it real with Realtor.com.
You know, it's
All right. But yeah, I hope you guys are listening. I'll do better at skipping them. It's just I hate ads. I hate ads so much. But he's right. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue.
It's another thing too when you look at other laws. For instance, New York actually has the worst fucking version of this law, by the way, too. So basically, it requires manufacturers of internet-enabled devices, so phones, tablets, computers, to conduct age assurance and determine the user's age category and provide all websites, online services, mobile applications on such user's internet-enabled device and or application store manufactured by the covered manufacturer with a digital signal that such user is a covered minor, as well as the age category of such a covered minor. So here's why this is even wilder than it is, okay? For one, like I said, covering things like Linux, almost impossible because there's so many distributions out there. But covering things like Microsoft Windows, covering things like Mac OS, covering iOS, covering Android, actually pretty reasonable because generally they'll go after the hardware manufacturer releasing their product in that state. So again, what's really scary about this, look, we talked about California's shitty law, but California's law was actually a little more benign because they allowed you to just self-report. I could say that I was like 35 years old and it would just believe me. But according to guys like System 76 who make Pop OS, they've said that this proposed Senate bill that we just looked at requires adults to prove they're adults to use a computer, exercise bike, smartwatch, or car. Because yes, everything is an operating system and some of these devices come with bundled app ecosystems. You know, I didn't fucking know this, but apparently in a Mustang, yes, a Mustang, there's an app store, all right? Could you imagine going up to your fucking grandpa and telling him, yeah, the current generation of Mustangs, they're nice, but you gotta be updating the onboard app store. Blow their fucking minds. But anyways, to give you an idea, they actually have this to say. The bill explicitly forbids self-reporting and leaves the allowed methods to regulations written by the AG. So practical methods for the bill of such extreme breadth would require, in many instances, providing private information to a third party just to use a computer at all. So here is the issue, right, which we go down. A Linux distribution downloaded from an internet could technically make the downloader the device manufacturer. They are the entity responsible for providing a freely distributed OS to the device. In practice, this type of language is rarely enforced. Nonetheless, it highlights how laws written for centralized platforms like iOS and Android struggle to define who is responsible in open source systems. So actually, it's a really good point to bring out. Linux is really just tough to govern, right? How do you govern something that's freely modified? How do you govern an open source project? But it is interesting when they talk about why privacy does disappear, because it does. When you need to provide your ID to use a fucking computer or an app store or anything, your privacy, your anonymity online disappears. And for a lot of people, for legitimate reasons, absolutely need that. You know, are you a journalist? Are you a reporter? Are you somebody that is living under a fucking tyrannical regime? Do you want your privacy? I think everyone should be entitled to privacy, okay? It's a very important thing for me. You know, I would never be comfortable ever purchasing a device or owning a device or owning a system where in order to do anything, I have to provide something. I know I live in that world, but I try to be as anonymous online as possible. I try to make it so that every account that I build online is as detached to my real identity as it logically can be. If I don't need to provide my ID, if I don't need to provide my billing information, if I don't need to provide my address, I don't, okay? But anyways, what is scary about these laws is how much they actually benefit the actual tech companies than they do the actual, children or anybody. Think about it like this. We're going into the future where companies like Facebook are not responsible for doing any age verification. They're putting all the blame on Apple and Google. So now Apple and Google capture your age, they provide your age, and sometimes they do it in a way where they provide brackets of an age, like 12 years old, 13 to 14, 15 to 16, 17, and then 18 and above. So now people on the internet that are trying to find children can now probably break into certain one of these groups and target a whole bunch of verified individuals that are underage, which obviously can't happen. Age verification shit isn't perfect. But the other angle of this that I feel like people aren't really talking about too is that when you provide your identity to these organizations, for a lot of companies like Facebook, for instance, they can get access to age verification data, even if they're not actually collecting it. Basically, via the app signals or the API signals, Meta basically gets access to age characterized user data without actually collecting it themselves. You know what I mean? Like they can simply ask the App Store, hey, this person downloading it, what is their age range? So now they've got that extra piece of identification that they normally wouldn't have had. It's like collecting somebody's like birth date without actually collecting it yourself. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. You can tag an account's age and you can see just how it grows older. You can feed it into its own set of algorithms that I think many people, if they realize how shitty these companies are, wouldn't feel comfortable about it.
You could be vaping formaldehyde, which is used in taxidermy.
Oh dear.
What?
Formaldehyde.
And again, a lot of these companies make their money through advertisements. And what is the best way to advertise is to hyper specifically target individuals. I mean, imagine being able to target a 14-year-old without legally knowing that they're 14 years of age or legally collecting that information themselves. It's weird because in a kind of way, it takes the defense of COPA and throws it out the fucking window, right? You know, it's not like you're collecting age data for a minor, but you kind of are in a fucking roundabout way. Now, there's a reason why I tell you guys to use AdBlock all the time. I don't shed a tear if you make me lose an extra buck here or there. It's not the end of the world. I'll still be fine. Again, I don't promote that because AdBlock is against YouTube's terms of services. But the idea about advertisement, and this is what really pisses me off, is that when you don't use AdBlock, you are exposing yourself to ad trackers and networks everywhere in the world. And the problem with all of that is that government agencies have found a way to surveil on you without breaking the law, without actually filing for a wiretap. Is that a lot of these organizations, a lot of these federal governments, a lot of these federal agencies end up purchasing information from, again, shady data brokers for literally $1 to $4 per users per year, which again, for the government is like nothing, right? The government it doesn't matter. They'll spend billions of dollars a day on stupid shit. But the government will purchase your information from a shady data broker that has harvested your personality from an actual set of ad trackers spread all the way around the internet. And through that, the government basically surveils you on a day-to-day basis. They watch everything that you do. They basically want to see where you're going in from. And of course, in some ways, they actually do this to figure out what your location is. So again, this is why I always say to use an ad blocker, and this is why I always say to fight against things like age verification. This is why I always say this shit is mass surveillance. Because that's what it is. There's no reason these people care about kids. If they cared about kids, these laws wouldn't be written in such shitty manners. They would actually be written for the protection of children. If they cared about kids, there would be more money put into actual awareness for current, child protection systems on devices, parental control systems. There would be a lot of effort put towards educating parents for that. If you're a parent and you care about your kids, a lot of protections are already there. But you have to care about your kids. I don't think the state should be responsible for taking care of the children. I think that should be on the responsibility of the two people that have worked together so hard to bring those children into the world. If you're going to bring kids into the world, fucking parent them. And if you don't want to parent them, then you're a piece of shit. But you being a piece of shit shouldn't be the reason why us living in freedom is now suddenly threatened. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.
But anyway, while that was going on, I did find like their video to watch. What the hell? Hang on.
Hello, guys and gals. Me.
Okay, we were right here, and then okay, that was gonna confuse me. But I added another video here because I felt that was important, and I got mixed up with the Sonic Rumble stream that I talked about. No, I was just talking about like how video games could be a good thing, but that's irrelevant for this. But the short summary of that is people are scapegoating video games way too much, and it could be very well a good thing when you play them together. But you know what? I'll put the link down in the description below anyway. But anyway, let's get back on topic about this digital ID crap and how we should have the right to privacy and to own our shit, okay? But yeah, the age verification. Those people in the Epstein files are pushing for this shit, by the way. And you notice ever since the files came out, there's been a greater push for this. So I'll be putting the link down below for the Epstein files. Not someone talking about the Epstein files, the actual files. Do your own digging, please. Alright,
Hey everybody, how's it going?
now we're gonna watch him.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're having a lovely day. Today I wanted to just follow up on a video that I did titled Age Verification is Getting Out of Hand. In this video, I was going over a bill from the state of Colorado. I'm not going to go over every single reason the bill is ridiculous. I went over that in this 7-minute video over here if you're interested. TLDR is when you start using an operating system, it's going to ask for your age. It's not going to ask for your ID, so this is not age verification. This is age indication, so anybody could lie. And the thing that I found stupid about this is that when they're discussing application or software distributors, this could potentially apply to me just going to mirc.com to download an IRC client and them having to indicate my age. There's a number of reasons that this is completely nonsensical. If they were to require ID or proof that I am the age that I say that I am, now you're getting into a situation where for me to use a computer in that state, I have to show my ID, which just is creepy. I don't feel like, no, I'm just, no. I don't feel like needing to get permission from my government to use a computer, because at the moment that you say, well, we need to be able to see your ID to do this, they could say, well, we don't want certain people to be allowed to use a computer. It's absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. Now, California has proposed a similar law, and one of the things that is bothering me here is where the aggravation is being directed when companies are talking about how to comply with this. System 76 is a cool company. I believe that they resell Clevo computers. They have their own operating system called Pop! OS. Pop! OS is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a fork of Ubuntu, and it comes with NVIDIA drivers and a bunch of other stuff, and is somewhat optimized for the systems they sell. So System 76 sells laptops and desktops, but they will sell them with Linux on them with the idea that when you buy this, everything's going to work. You don't have to deal with this part of the hardware doesn't work or that. They sell it with Linux, which is pretty cool. Now, this company is going to be complying with this law, and there are people discussing this on their subreddit, and they're very clear that they don't want this. I personally hate this bill, they say, and the idiot lawmakers who have pushed it. However, it passed unanimously, minus 3 votes not recorded in the California Assembly, which has 60 Democratic and 20 Republican members. I would expect similar bills to pass in more states, and it is possible similar legislation would be passed in Europe elsewhere in the future. I do not believe most free and open source software is ready to handle the ludicrous amount of legal liability this kind of legislation introduces. The talk of noncompliance would be fun if there was not a $7,500 fine per child who uses the operating system for the operating system provider performing intentional noncompliance. I can assure you that all Pop! OS and likely many other open source operating systems will do everything possible to prevent identification of users. This bill does not require any identifying information of users to be stored. And they don't like this. And again, signed, my deepest and dearest disdain to Gavin Newsom and the California State Assembly. There's a great post following up on this from somebody saying, if all they're doing is requiring age to be input, not verified at the OS level, why do you think they're doing that? Do you really think that's all they want? You have to know, if they're being honest, that this will only be the first step to get you to comply with an unreasonable mandate and likely unconstitutional, so that they have your company do the work of implementing their demands, so that you will be ready to implement the next step. And you have to know that the next step is the purpose for this first step. They don't care about people entering random numbers into a computer as required to get the OS to work. That's clearly not the point. The point is to see who complies with the first step, so that you don't have a leg to stand on when they demand what they really want. You know this. You have to know this. The only way your company gets out of this, sadly, is to refuse to do business with states that require these absolutely insane surveillance laws on your property. I think he's right. I think lawmakers are watching this wondering, can we get them to be okay with putting something in the operating that says you must be 18 to do X, Y, and Z? And then, well, listen, you had to know that we were going to ask for your ID at some point, right? Like, you're right. Lewis is correct when he said that this law does nothing because it doesn't ask for ID. You already did this. You ask for ID, right? Because it's easier at that point to get them to ask for ID than it is to get the companies to say, you know what, never mind, we were uncomfortable with this to begin with. Because you already took the first step, people are less likely to take a step back because they've already committed. And that's the arm twisting that I think that is going on here. This is my controversial take here, but my problem was with how many people are crapping on System 76 for saying that they're going to comply with this, rather than crapping on the legislators in the state of Colorado and California. This person over here saying that I'm not going to be doing business with their company anymore. System 76 is going on record saying, we don't want to do this, we hate this, we think these legislators suck. Can you find somebody from Dell or Acer or Asus or Toshiba that's willing to say that? Can you find somebody from Microsoft or Apple that's willing to say that? Not really. And again, to be clear, I am somewhat biased here as a business owner. Because I understand what it's like to have your arm twisted in this particular way. California is not Wyoming. California is almost 40 million people. California is a very large part of the country. And while it is not the entire country, not doing business with that entire state, if you are a small business that is selling via mail order, that is going to fuck you in a very large way. I understand what it's like to go through this. I had my website almost completely wiped off of Google for 6 months, and I figured out what it is I needed to do to get it back. It just magically started ranking again once I told Gemini, what is it that Google wants my website to say? And then just putting it up there. After 6 months of fucking around and editing my site and updating it in every single way possible in the way that I wanted it to look, nothing worked. I asked Gemini, what do you want it to look like? Boom, I rank. At one point, I was even #1. Didn't last for long, but I was #1 for a good period of time. That's crazy. I was this close to the point where I was thinking, let me just sell my website and my Google Maps listing for $5,000 to somebody else, sell all the hardware at my business, close and do something else. I was this close to that just a few months ago. I understand what it's like to be at the point where you're getting drained down to zero and there's not much any choices left. I really hate having conversations with people who have not done anything horribly wrong just to say, I'm sorry, I don't have the money to pay you anymore. You've done nothing wrong. When I have hired somebody who is a thief or somebody who treats people like shit or breaks everything or has a horrible attitude, firing them is a lot of fun. But when you just walk up to somebody and say, I'm sorry, California implemented an age verification law, and in order to make people happy on Reddit, we are not selling there anymore. Therefore, all 8 of you have to get laid off. Like, that's a really difficult thing to do, and I have some empathy for that. Now, I'm not saying that it would be right for them to put surveillance into all their products, but I really am not seeing but I really rather see the aggravation at the people who made this. Like, I understand why you're mad at System 76, and I also I get that if they do it, everybody else is going to do it. But Microsoft is going to comply with this. Apple's going to comply with this. Major vendors are going to comply with this. After being mad at the legislators, be mad at the $3 to $4 trillion companies that have the resources to push back against these laws that System 76 doesn't. Then be mad at System 76. But we need to push together against the people who are actually screwing us. The people who are screwing us are the legislators that are coming up with these age verification laws, not System 76. Yeah, you could stop using System 76 because the Linux distribution that they bundle with it asks for your age. But what are you going to go to? You're going to go buy a laptop from Acer where they bundle it by default with Windows 11? Like, what are we doing here? I mean, you don't have to use their operating system on their computer. You can use another operating system on their computer. And I appreciate that when they're putting the devices together, they're putting their products together with the mind, I want to make sure that this works with Linux. Like, I don't own a System 76 computer. I'm not saying this because I own stock in their company or I'm a fanboy. I just really hope that people stay mad at the people who actually created this problem rather than the people that are debating internally, do we push back against this and lay off 10 or 30 people, or do we go ahead with the same thing that every other company is being forced to go ahead with so that we can stay in business? And obviously, I'm biased as somebody who has been through this very experience very recently. It sucks that in the modern world that many companies are faced with stick with your principles and stop being a business, or, deal with the world as it is. It's not fun. Just the rant. I'll just put the disdain where it belongs, please. That's it for today. And as always, hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.
Alright, that's a pretty good video. But, yeah, I was thinking more about that Sonic Rumble stream. I did talk about a little bit about this, but not too much, so I'll still put that one Sonic Rumble stream on the description, but need to head here.
Chicken Al Pastor is back at Chipotle.
I am
where
sorry
fire
for these
meets flavor.
advertisements.
Here for a limited time.
It's like I've gotten to the
Chipotle,
point where I got
for
tired
real.
of skipping them, and I'm just like, ugh.
Since the dawn of time, man has been plagued
But
by itch
showing you
and
guys these
irritation from not
videos
wiping
and you guys
food
supporting
clean
these
because
creators
he
is
Hello,
important.
guys.
Because this isn't about protecting the children. This is just mass surveillance. And there's a good chance they're going to be trafficking children through this. And, I mean, women too, but take a look at the Epstein files. That'll be down in the description below too. Alright. We're gonna... Yes, no. lengthy video. I mean, not that lengthy, and then we'll finish this off with this, and I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts and wrap things up, okay?
Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and you know, you might be like, whoa, Muda, you can't hit me with the doomer stuff like that. You know, I don't want to start these videos off with the big doom and gloom. I'm actually an anti-doomer in a lot of ways. So before we continue on this, I just want you to understand, there's ways that you can fight back against the crazy shit that is happening all around us. It seems in the last year that things have ramped up and escalated so hard when it comes to locking down and controlling what we can and cannot do, that to me, I make these videos to teach you guys and educate you on things that are happening around you that actually do affect you, right? They actually can have the possibility of affecting what is our hobby, whether it be gaming, whether it be playing on Linux with virtual machines, whether it be browsing the internet on our own free dime. This is something that, of course, you can fight back. I'm going to bring up some laws today that, again, have just dropped. It seems like every day there's like a new law that comes in, okay? I've never seen the government work together so fucking well when it comes to achieving this one thing, which is globally age verifying and locking down a lot of our systems. Now, as the title of this video would imply, I really think the goal here is to make Linux, at least for the consumer level, somewhat illegal, right? And that might be an extreme way of putting it, but bear with me, okay? Just stick around and let's get started with the front of this, okay? There's a lot to cover. Now, over the last few weeks, over the last 2 weeks, I talked about age verification on the operating system level, right? So we looked at laws from California, we looked at laws from New York, and, you know, we even had big guys like System 76, you know, who are behind Pop! OS, and they actually sell Linux computers, even come out and talk about age verification at the OS level. A lot of these guys hate it. Everyone hates it. Unfortunately, the law is the law. If the law tells you to do something, you're probably going to do it. Otherwise, you're going to get penalties. You're not going to be able to fight that shit in court legally. You have to stop it now. Otherwise, it gets worse than it is. Now, to understand, a lot of these laws that are introduced, like California, are self-attestation, meaning that basically the goal for now is to put up a little screen that asks you for your age, sort of your age or date of birth. And a lot of these guys, the lawmakers, come in thinking that, you know, they're governing iPhones, Android devices, Windows computers, Mac OS systems. But they forget that Linux doesn't really have things like accounts, all right? There are users in Linux, but you're not really sending information out to anybody. Now we're getting to a point where a lot of these systems are considering adding in age verification, or they're ultimately thinking of, do we even want to serve a lot of these areas? Which might have been fine if 1 or 2 states, 1 or 2 countries was knocking down, but it seems like everybody's knocking down. So interestingly, I saw something from the Attorney General in Florida over here. So it's time over. Time for negotiations are done. Big tech companies have 30 days from today to implement age restrictions on social media access for kids under 14. Within 60 days, parental consent must be in place for 14 to 16 years of age. Okay, so I want to listen to what this guy has said. Obviously, before we begin, I just want to talk about how loaded this shit is, right? So to give you an idea, the prosecuting child predators part is fucking hilarious to me, because this is coming from a government, by the way, that has handled the Epstein files in such a terrible manner that it feels like a lot of people in the government, some of the people at the top, might have been doing something untowards with children, right? It's crazy to think that we are governed by actual pedophiles. But now, instead of actually, you know, chasing after the leads that have been presented in those files, instead of going through and prosecuting shit, the American government has decided, all right, in piecemeal, we're just going to lock down and mass surveil people. You don't care about the children. If you gave even an iota of a shit about the kids, you would probably put some people behind bars. But they're not doing that, okay? The Epstein situation is just a situation here. It's not being acted on with the respect that it deserves. But I'm supposed to believe these guys actually care about kids? Come on now. You know, framing it like this is already a bad look, because they're trying to usher in mass surveillance, you know, taking away your privacy under the guise of protecting children, meaning that if somebody like me questions them, this piece of shit and all these other fucking pieces of shit behind them will go, well, you don't care about kids? No, I do care about kids. I also care about the law. And you guys seem to be really good at fucking both the kids and the law. Anyways, let's get started here.
Look, parents have tough decisions to make. I do think parents need to reevaluate what is the appropriate age to give your kid a cell phone where they have the internet at their fingertips. When I was 15, 16 years old, that didn't exist yet. So today, you see kids now, and I know, my 5-year-old daughter is so smart and so cute and so persuasive. It's hard for me to say no to her. I can only imagine what it's like when suddenly she's 13 or 14 and all the other kids have them. So that is a tough decision to make. I'll tell you this, she's not getting a phone at 14 or 15 years old. No way. TikTok, very, very dangerous. We see a lot of predatorial activity there, a lot of pornography that's still on the site. We're working to hold them accountable. We have a recently passed piece of legislation, SB 3, that says under 14, it's illegal for these social media sites to let them on. 14 to 16, you can have access, but only after explicit parental approval. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals recently upheld that law. It is the law of the land. And we're giving companies, really until another 30 days from now to get straight with regard to the under 14, 60 days to ensure parental consent is in place, and then we will begin filing lawsuits as fast as you can see.
So this guy is giving that little smug laugh here. Basically, what they're saying is that the social media companies in this point, they have to effectively prove that they're not reaching minors, right? And the only way that they can do that is by verifying every single account through all of these age verification methods. Some of these verification methods, like Discords, for instance, where information has unfortunately been leaked out for hackers to grab, and there's been reported information, of this thing called Infutor, for instance, where like 676 million consumer records were out. Obviously, I haven't confirmed this entirely myself, but if it's true and a vast amount of information is out there, 676 million is literally almost double, I believe, what the current US population is. So I imagine a lot of this also includes, like they say, deceased people. I haven't verified this information for myself, but you can imagine in a world where these tech companies do the bare minimum of treating our shit with any form of security, do you honestly think this isn't going to be a big minefield down the road? Forget the data surveillance, forget the mass surveillance shit, that's bad, but imagine if a bunch of hackers start getting access to things like your address, date of birth, social security numbers, driver identification, all of that crazy stuff. That's what these scumbag politicians don't really think of. Now, in the mind of this politician, he's trying to think that he's doing a good thing by forcing these social media companies to age verify. But in reality, he's not really being truthful in saying that a lot of these platforms, and I'll show you it really quickly. Do you run Ubuntu, for instance, Linux? You know that there's parental controls on Linux right now. Parents can look through and restrict web browsers, applications, installing applications, restricting them by an age group that you do on your own local system. No need to collect anything, just you being a fucking parent. Of course, hey, what if you have an iPad? Well, you can actually control your kids' iPad usage through Apple's various parental control features baked right into the fucking system. Oh, did you buy your kid a MacBook? Well, congratulations, not only are they running CloudBot, but you can lock that shit down using parental controls without ruining my experience on the fucking internet. There's also Microsoft Family Safety. One credit I'll give Microsoft, they also have great family controls. And you know what the best part is? You even get little notifications on your cell phone if little Timmy's trying to access sites that little Timmy shouldn't be accessing. Oh, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. What about a gaming console? Did you buy your kid a PlayStation? Well, you can get the PlayStation Family app and monitor exactly what your kid's doing online. So there are ways to monitor and control your children and what they do on the internet. These politicians are basically not even, reality, I would support this if all these politicians did was educate parents about this kind of behavior. You know what's really funny to me is if all the social media stuff is so bad for your mental health, why do we not implement a way, and I don't even agree with this either, but if you're going to buy a tablet, if you're going to buy a smartphone that exposes you to the scary internet, Why not have the actual agent at the store, like the actual cashier, like you would go to a bar, verify your driver's license before they sell you such a dangerous product, right? But Muda, what if kids need a computer for their school? Well, the school can provide that, and you know what the school can also do? Lock that bitch down. You ever get a laptop for work? You know how monitored and surveilled that laptop is? Because if you do anything other than work, everyone in the cyber department will just fucking know what you're doing. Do you know what's really interesting too? If computers and the internet are so dangerous, why do you give a child a loaded handgun? You know, that might be a big jump for some people. Do you get a Glock? Do you put a magazine full of rounds in it? Do you rack the slide back, make sure one is loaded in the chamber, and hand it off to little Timmy? If the answer to that is yes, check yourself into a fucking police station and never ever allow yourself near a child, let alone another human being. If the answer to that is no, I wouldn't let a child have a fucking loaded gun, congratulations, that's the most basic parenting, that's the most basic adult shit that you can do. Do you let a child have access to a bottle of Everclear or Grey Goose vodka or whatever the fuck you want to drink? No, because alcohol is bad. You don't give it to children. Do you just give a nudie magazine to a child? No, you don't. So if the internet is so dangerous and these phones and these tablets allow these kids to enter a world of intense grooming, why is there not at least an at sale check that could verify if an adult is purchasing for them, right? We do it for video games. You know, you go to a GameStop, you know, a little 12-year-old goes and, you know, I want to buy Grand Theft Auto 6. Well, little kid, do you have your parent with you so I can see their ID? Why don't we do that? Why don't these politicians push for that instead of these social media sites and the verification right there? Look, I don't agree with locking down hardware like that.
I want to stop them right here. But I do agree with them, like, why not have an age verification? I mean, not like have a parent with the child at a register to purchase these devices if these are supposedly so dangerous. Like, it makes you think. But anyway, I'm gonna let him talk.
But at the end of the day, these fucking politicians have made it so annoying and it's so transparent that the only thing they care about is the internet that they want to control. Now, at least in Florida's case, they're putting the blame on the actual social media company. But in other cases, and this is where it gets really, really scary too. And it's also funny to me that guys like Ron DeSantis, who are championing the whole thing about we don't like any form of digital ID. Brother, what do you think the social media stuff is going to be? It is in a roundabout way digital ID. It's mass surveillance. So again, you can't trust these politicians. Now this bill, SB 3977, actually talks about, again, the Children's Social Media Safety Act. Now this one says literally no later than January 1st, 2028, so there's actually 2 years till this happens. But again, I talked about all this stuff like literally years before, and now we're here. Now we're sitting here looking at this crazy shit, okay? Now I'm making more videos because we didn't listen back then, so hopefully we'll listen now. So over here they talk about it and they say an operating system provider shall provide an accessible interface at account setup that requires the account holder to indicate the birth date, age, or both. Then provide an operator who has requested a signal with respect to the particular user, a signal that identifies, so again, the age range right over here. And 3, send only the minimum amount of information necessary to comply with the provision. Provides that an operator shall not offer a platform in the state without conducting age verification as required under the Act to determine whether the user is a minor. So the way that that law reads to me is, you know, unless the operating system that you're using, the operating system that is running in your state, unless it has some level of age verification and a signal to pass on, it's not going to be allowed. Now, here's the really scary part about this situation, right? First off, these age verification laws have blown up to the point that even weather applications, for instance, this is a real screenshot, I verified this myself, a weather app required me to provide my age range. You have to be 18 years old, so your experience in this app isn't limited to child or teen content. What the fuck could a child be seeing on the weather? Is the moisture gonna freak that kid out and give him some crazy signs? What's going on here? But again, the thing about all this is that when these operating systems ask for it, one thing you have to understand is a lot of people, including me, have went down the rabbit hole. And a lot of people that are pushing for the operating systems to be responsible are actually backed by organizations like Meta, obviously the guys behind Facebook and WhatsApp. And the reality of it is that there's two templates that are being shown around, the App Store Accountability Act and the Digital Age Assurance Act. So the reality is both result in universal age verification. The difference is who builds it. Is it the social media site or is it the actual operating system? Now, of course, the thing about it is Meta apparently is paying a lot of the lobbying costs for this shit. And a lot of people went down, for instance, looking at these child advocacy groups that were demanding these App Store accountabilities. They started following the money in the situation. When the actual senators asked for a yes or no answer on which tech companies were providing funding, they basically confirmed that they get money, but they didn't want to name them. Which is interesting to me because I want to know who the fuck is paying you guys for pushing these App Store laws. So ultimately, at the end of the day, Bloomberg did confirm by themselves that it might have actually just been Meta. So why would somebody like Meta pay money for this? Why would companies pay millions of dollars to push this law? Remember, there are laws like COPA, which I think are great because they protect children from having their information grabbed by these scummy tech companies. But let's say, for example, we have operating systems where you pass age verification, right? So in your operating system, let's say that it reports that you're 16 years of age, or 15, for instance. And now the social media site, grabs or asks your computer for your age range. So now the social media company knows, without knowing who you are, what your age range is. So it's identified this blip is 15 years of age. Now, through a various amount of other trackers and fingerprinting, it can verify who you are without even getting your name. It's that invasive on the internet. So a lot of these tech companies basically can violate COPA, from my understanding, and grab information they're not supposed to and not even be liable for it. It's a fucking insane way to push targeted advertising, and in a roundabout way, because of the information being subpoenaed, it leads to things like mass surveillance. Again, you have to really look deep into the story. That's why these videos are long. That's why these videos can be confusing, because you have to look deep into this story. If you don't look deep enough, you don't understand how invasive and how predatory these companies actually are. They don't care about kids, they just care about making more money at the expense of your privacy and even your children's privacy to an extent. Now, thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. For instance, some of these laws, like Senate Bill 2420, have actually been blocked in Texas, restricting kids from things like app stores. So a federal judge has actually jumped in and said that this violates things like your free speech rights, which I actually tend to agree. The act is akin to a law that will require every bookstore to verify the age of every customer at the door, and for minors require parental consent before the child or teen could enter, and again when they try to purchase a book. So it's a pretty accurate way of looking at it, because no matter what, this law does lead to censorship. Who decides what is adult material? Who decides, what material you have to lock behind an age gate? That is an interesting way to look at this stuff too, right? You have to, again, look deep into these stories. And look, ultimately, at the end of the day, when it comes to Linux, right, like a lot of these actual organizations, they're not going to have the money to fight this kind of stuff. A lot of Linux, a lot of Linux distributions, like for instance, Midnight BSD, they're not Linux, they're BSD based. But they've had to implement actual license changes where they said, look, if you're in any country, territory that requires this crap, you're not authorized to use our system. And even though this might seem like a pretty stopgap fix, not everyone can do this. For instance, Valve distributing things like SteamOS. Valve will have to introduce methods like this, age verification stuff, into their system, because they sell hardware and they sell software in all of the states that we've mentioned, all of the countries that we've mentioned here. So regardless, there's going to be big Linux distributions that are actually run by big companies that have to actually contribute to this bullshit. They have to play by these dumb rules. Now, thankfully, in that case, there's still so many other distributions like in this list that we can all switch to. So for instance, what these politicians don't get is that you might be able to lock down something like Ubuntu, but you probably won't be able to lock down something like MX Linux. You probably won't be able to lock down something like NixOS, or something that's outside the purview. But what happens if laws start passing where the people chairing these projects are actually living? That's a scary world. It feels like, again, A lot of these laws right now are self-attestation, and you might be like, well, that doesn't mean that they're collecting information. The problem is the framework is there. So in a year from now, when the politicians realize it's not invasive enough, they can just keep creeping the law higher and higher and higher, right? Remember, a lot of these laws started off with, people blocking pornography sites, and it sounded like a pretty noble goal. Now we're at a point where, weather sites are asking you for age ranges. We're getting to a point where, the most anemic looking social media site now needs to play by these rules as well too. It's expanded so much so quickly. Now thankfully there's also people that are fighting back against this. This individual by the name of Hapless Idiot actually did produce and talk about the age verification bypass method. So here they do talk about, again, what is going on. So inside the buses for Linux systems, they look at something known as free desktop and the various age verification systems that could be implemented in there. And of course, ultimately, he has a sanctuary protocol for people achieving sovereignty. So right over here, he does say that, listen, and this is a great example of it too. How would you verify things like headless systems? How would you, deal with automated environments, GitHub Actions, things like virtual machines, for instance, too, which are also operating systems running within operating systems. He talks about things like de-anonymization. So, when you make a Linux account, like for instance, my Linux account is my name, add Overlord, which is my system's host name. This account was not made using an internet service. It was something that I made using one line on the terminal, just wrote in my name, gave myself permissions, and did it all locally. What happens when now that private space is now being tied to a state-issued identification system? I think he says it right. Why we fight the measured silence of corporate developers is a blueprint of our digital cages. We believe that an operating system belongs to the user, not the state. Whether you're a cybersecurity professional, a gamer, or a sysadmin running headless nodes in Cahokia Heights, you deserve a system that doesn't demand your papers to run a sudo command. The true hand is shown. The nonprofit mask is slipping. I bypassed Red Hat's dbus and survived the permafrost on Telegram staff unfroze me and wished me good luck. This tool is for educational and system hardening purposes. By using the script, you're asserting your right to digital privacy and the sovereignty of your own hardware. That, to me, is probably the most succinct and honest way to put it. None of these organizations, none of these government guys give a shit about you or your kids. All they care about is locking down your system. And it used to be wait a year for these laws to pass, but in some cases, the laws have already passed. And in some cases, they're only giving 30 days before all these organizations. And sometimes it's the social media, sometimes it's the operating system. Point is, no matter what, it's a bad situation all around. But ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and I feel like I know that I'm talking about this a fair bit, but the only way to win against this is to educate yourself and know that in some cases there are some wins, but in order to keep getting more wins, you have to bring this up at your local level. I don't ever like to get involved in things like politics. Like for me, I'm not understanding of a lot of it, but I do understand that when these politicians who, to be honest with you, I think a lot of them are just complete fucking scumbags. But when those scumbags are pushing for systems that are reducing your safety, your privacy, at some point you have to stand up and you have to talk against it. And honestly, you have to fight back. You just have to. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome.
All right, that was a bit of a hassle, but yeah, he's right. Anyway, we're on the last video, then I'll give my full thoughts about all these and wrap things up. All right.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of Our Government is Run by Pedophiles and How You're Getting Fucked. I'm your host, Louis Rossmann. I know I'm going to sound salty in saying this, but there are consequences to somebody like me not becoming FTC chair. This may have seemed like a joke to you, but a year and a half ago, I showed up on this website, Nominees for the People, that was started, I think, by RFK Jr., correct me if I'm wrong, and the idea behind this website was to figure out who people wanted for high up positions in government, because this was supposed to be a government by the people, for the people, and yeah, it's mostly a government of loyalists who may or may not have bribed their way into the administration. But in theory, In the beginning, the idea was that. And one of the things I thought was cool about this website is that anybody could nominate somebody and then you would just see what people thought. And one of the things that was very interesting is that my name showed up consistently. And I think some of the people with the highest vote rates on this website were me for FTC chair. Now, I'm not a lawyer. There are many reasons people can make the argument that I'm not necessarily qualified to be FTC chair, but I thought it was very cool. I was humbled and honored by everybody that voted for me. Unfortunately, the person that actually became FTC chair was somebody that thought it should be more difficult to cancel gym memberships, who dissented on concepts like click to cancel. But today, I wanted to saltily let you know what some of the consequences are of the current FCC being the current FTC and reading what they think on age verification. Now, age verification is this thing where you decide that you are going to ask for ID or biometric scans to prove that somebody is over 18 in order to use a product or service, which is a great way to group people that don't use that, who are adults, with people who are actual children. Great fucking job protecting the kids there. But one of the things that I think is the most interesting about all of this is that there are actual laws in the books that will prevent a lot of this from occurring. In Colorado, a bill has been presented that would just be asking for age indication, as in, I indicate that I'm over 18, not verification. But you know that at some point that this is going to get to the point where they ask for proof that you are above 18. At some point, this will become genuine age verification. A law proposed in New York is a little bit more strict with it, and we all know where this is going. Now, one of the things that I found interesting is that there are laws on the books and rules in the books that make it illegal to collect this type of information from kids without parental consent and a lot of red tape, which I think is a great thing. I think there should be as much red tape as possible when it comes to collecting information from children on the internet. This is a law and a rule. You have the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule, the COPPA rule, and the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which is a law. I was very curious how this age verification shit would work with this, because the whole point behind this is don't collect information from children. And the FTC released a statement last week that I missed saying that we're actually just not going to enforce that anymore. And I quote, policy statement announces enforcement approach regarding the collection, use, and disclosure of personal data to determine the age of a user. The Federal Trade Commission issued a policy statement today announcing that the Commission will not bring an enforcement action under the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule against certain website and online service operators that collect, use, and disclose personal information for determining a user's age via age verification technologies. The COPPA rule requires operators of commercial websites or online services directed to children under 13 and operators with actual knowledge they're collecting personal information from a child to provide notice of their information practices to parents and obtain verifiable parental consent before collecting, using, or disclosing personal information collected from a child under 13. I think that's great. Personally, I'm sick and tired of a lot of the services that collect my data even as an adult, but this is a start. There is some red tape, there is some friction in the process of collecting data from children. Age verification technologies play a critical role in helping parents as they monitor their children's online activities. As noted by the FTC's recent workshop in age verification technologies, some age verification technologies may require the collection of personal information from children, prompting questions about whether such activities could violate the COPPA rule, which I think they do. Age verification technologies are some of the most child protective technologies to emerge in decades, said Christopher Mufriage, director of the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection. Our statement incentivizes operators to use these innovative tools, empowering parents to protect their children online. So the current FTC thinks that this protects children online, and the best part of this entire document is when they talk about the commission vote. Commission. The commission vote to issue the policy statement was 2-0. 2 is not a commission. If you're going to be revoking a law or a rule that prohibits collecting personal data from children on the internet, you should have more than 2 people voting on it. But hey, that's just me. I ain't a legal scholar, and I ain't the head of the FTC. This is a government of pedophiles at this point. I don't know how else to put it. This does not protect people online. It doesn't. You're literally grouping people who are adults who have simply not verified their age with actual children. You're making it easier for people to prey on children online. You're making it easier legally to collect data on children, which can be misused or mishandled in fucked up ways. There have been enough data breaches recently to demonstrate that all of this data that's being collected at some point is going to be leaked. And if you have a lot of companies that are rushing to comply with these laws as quickly as possible, they're likely going to be rushing to find a vendor, meaning they're rushing to implement it, meaning they're probably not taking the time to do a security audit of all of this. I can't imagine how people who literally say that we want to protect the children are no longer going to enforce a law that prevents you from collecting data from children.
Something else I'm getting tired of is all this stupid bullshit we have to listen to all the time about children. It's all you hear in this country. Children, help the children. What about the children? Save the children. You know what I say? Fuck the children. Fuck them.
This is The Onion, and I hope that all of you see that. And one of the things that I think you ask above everything else, I talked about this when it came to flock cameras as well. There are a lot of issues in the country right now, whether you're talking like abortion, immigration, or back in the day, COVID lockdowns, vaccines, everything else, where people are heavily divided on what to do, and you can kind of put a line down the middle where each camp is like, I can't believe somebody would think that, but there are people out there that think that. When it comes to this, whether it's you or somebody who votes the exact opposite of you, who would hate you and everything you stand for. One of the things that you all have in common is you all think this is ridiculous and you all hate this. So if people like you and people who hate people like you both don't like this, then why is it continuing to get pushed through? It's not about the people that vote differently from you. It's about the people who have power over you. And when you start asking that question and focusing your eye in that direction, you might start to get some answers and perhaps different results. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. Louis Rossmann for FTC Chair 2028. I'm just going to throw that out there, that if I was the FTC chair, I would not be revoking laws and regulations that stop companies from collecting children's data. And this is one of the things that's the most frustrating when it comes to deregulation in general. I understand there's a lot of stupid regulations in the books. Finding Louis $1,000 because he doesn't have his business license number on his business card, silly law. Why do we always have to start when it comes to deregulation at the laws that make sense? Don't collect personally identifiable information from children. Great law. Airlines should provide refunds or discounts if they fuck over the passenger and mess up their trip. Great law. There's millions of stupid laws in the books. Why do you start by getting rid of the ones that make sense? Government of pedophiles. I said it. I stand behind it. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. See you in the next video. Bye now. Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you
Okay, so that's it. I'll be adding all these videos to the description, along with the Epstein files and the one Sonic Rumble where I was like rambling, because I did talk a little bit about it, like about the importance of basically that you have to power, you know, the. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here and it's hot as fuck today. But basically, you have to power in your fingertips. Like you can, all the information is out there, but these are great videos, and more people need to wake the fuck up. That no government in any country gives a fuck about people like you and me. They don't. And if you make it a left or a right thing, then you're already lost. It's all politicians. It's all the government. It's even just about all the celebrities as well, like all the Hollywood people. Yeah, there's a few good ones, but that's like finding a needle in a haystack. Or, well, we should go by SpongeBob's that one episode, finding a hay in a needle stack at this point. Hey, even though Nickelodeon is a bunch of scumbags, I still like SpongeBob. Like, I will still watch it, but anyway. Please support these guys. These guys are great, and everyone talking about like, why aren't more of these YouTubers speaking up? They need to speak up and spread this around. I mean, you gotta be your own hero. I mean, sometimes you gotta step up and just try to do the right thing and spread information. Like I said, we have the power in our fingertips. You can create content. You can make video games. You can make animation. It just starts with you. You can collab with other people. It will take work. Hence why it's called work. But I also want to point out the people that say, oh, kids will get out of parental controls, therefore we need digital ID. Yeah, they're the same type of people / parents that can't even be bothered to parent, so I wouldn't even listen to them. And yeah, I'm not going to ignore that kids can get by parental controls. That's a thing. But guess what? There are better parental controls, and you can see exactly what the kids are doing. You just gotta educate yourself and look up what those parental controls do and how you could check on them. I'm not saying that control every aspect of their life, but just make sure they're safe. And if they're going by the parental controls, then that shows they just don't respect your authority or really want to look up something that bad. Like, communicate with your kids. Jesus. But But anyway, please support those two, and please don't be discouraged from spreading the word and making your own content and making your own shit. Cause just speak up. Inspire others. Be the good example. Be your own hero. But anyway, that's really it. I did this because I wanted to spread the word myself, like more so than usual. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not gonna go down as someone who stays silent. I'll at least go down as someone that spoke up and tried to do the right thing. Alright. But anyway. Please remember to be the best versions of yourselves and respect one another, and I'll see you guys in the next video, okay? Bye-bye. Oh, my bad. Habit. Alright.